All right, so we on the phone right now. We have Moe Lawyers for Workers, famous for being instrumental in our understanding about these cases. Round of applause for Moe. He has been someone, like I said, that has helped further our understanding when these criminal court cases happen in situations like that, and we bring them in. How you doing today, my brother?
I'm good, bro. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all, man. We always tap in with you. I know the culture knows your voice, and if they don't, they'll get used to it. I know you were at the NBA YoungBoy trial. Can you just kind of give me a little bit about the atmosphere at the trial?
It was like every trial, man. It was tense because a man's freedom is on the line. You know, he was facing felon in possession cases in federal court have a maximum of 10 years. Now, every individual defendant is going to get a different federal sentencing guidelines score. And depending on what your score is how many years out of that 10 you actually face. So for any defendant, the max is 10. But based on your factors, your prior arrests, your prior convictions, you're going to get a score, and then you're facing some. So YoungBoy, he was facing like 5 years because he's got prior violent crime, felony convictions. So if he caught a guilty in that case yesterday, there was a chance they'd remand him. They'd take him off house arrest. They would have put the cuffs on him right after the verdict was read. They would have walked him into the back and they would have locked him up. And then he's looking at sentencing where there's a very realistic shot at him getting 5 years. So, Loon, it was tense.
Man, and I know, like I said, in these cases, we tend to not get a fair shot. With the feds, it's a little more cleaner approach and cleaner process than the state. I think they're a little uncomfortable with the loss. But I've heard you say that it was the jury did have what appeared to be his peers. It helped me understand how you came to that conclusion.
So this was Los Angeles County. And the citizens of Los Angeles County are a pretty diverse set. There was a big range of races, occupations, ages. I was a little disappointed at the fact that, to my eye, I didn't see a lot of African Americans in the potential jurors. But overall, you know, I thought the jury was a jury of his peers. Look, with the state and federal, both systems are hard, Loon.
Right. With
state, you know, there's a little bit more opportunity to plea bargain. There's a little more flexibility with the sentencing. The sentences aren't as high. The football numbers aren't there.
Right.
But you run into some stuff where the judges maybe aren't as good as the federal judges, and sometimes you don't really get fair rulings. You know, rap lyrics might get used against you, I think, a lot easier in state court than in federal court.
Exactly.
A state court could deny your bond a lot easier than a federal court. So in that sense, you know, that's one difference. But then the federal court, I mean, you don't want to be there either because the sentencing is so high.
Exactly.
I mean, you're talking about just being in possession of it's too high, man.
Right.
So yeah, you get a real smart judge who's going to really look at the law and be very strict with what evidence they can use against you. But the stakes, they really up it on the sentencing. So it's both of them are just not a place you want to be.
Right. And for the audience who may be living under a rock or catch this at a different time, they may run this on TV at some point in time. Can you kind of explain to the audience the evidence that they had on this particular case with NBA YoungBoy?
So not a lot. I don't know that if this wasn't YoungBoy that they would have went so hard. The evidence they had on him was this. He is being asked to pull over. He pulls over, but then as the cops get out the car to come up and approach his vehicle, he speeds off. And then he speeds off, he abandons the car, he runs out of the car, and now he's hiding somewhere. And in the car, they find a gun. And they say, you're a felon, you can't have a gun. This gun was in your possession. That's the charge. Now, the one thing they didn't have was his prints or his DNA on the gun. And that's not too uncommon. There's actually a lot of research out there that shows that if you test the gun or if you test, magazines and bullets, a lot of times, maybe, 80, 90% of the time, you're not actually going to be able, for fingerprints at least, 80, 90% of the time, you're not going to be able to pick up a print. With the DNA, it's not as clear. The DNA, they couldn't put the DNA on him because there was 5 different types of DNA found on the gun, and their lab, when they have 5 different types, can't really start saying, you know, whose DNA is what, because it's just too many types. If there was only 4 different types, so they didn't have that physical evidence against him. And then it became, you know, a case where the prosecution is asking you to believe that this individual knew the gun was in the car. That's why he ran. That's why he abandoned the car. And then the defense is asking you to say, hold up. Yeah, people who flee from police might be guilty, but you know what? People also kind of flee from police because they're terrified of what the police might do to them. Now, fleeing from police is a crime. I don't recommend it. But in the context of a jury trial, in a post-George Floyd America,
you can argue
the idea that 12 Los Angeles County residents are just going to go ahead and assume that somebody fled from police, hang them up. Nah, people are a little bit more open to that argument. And then the defense pointed out, look, this wasn't a traffic stop. This wasn't like one car pulling somebody over and then they flee because they're trying to get rid of evidence. This was a guy who pulled over when one car pulled up. And then there's like 6 cars behind that car. There's 2 unmarked vehicles coming in from the sides. And there's all these officers who aren't walking up calmly. No, there's officers popping out the side of their car, propping their door, getting behind it in a defensive position. Other officers approaching, kind of low, crouched, reaching at the hip. So the idea that he drove off, there was some doubt put into the jury's head that, hey, did he drive off because he was scared of getting caught with the gun, or did he drive off because he was scared that, yo, what is happening right now?
Right. So with that being the case, they came to the jury and tried to explain to them. Did they argue constructive possession or?
Yeah, they were arguing constructive possession, that you knew the gun was in the car and that you intended to possess it. And without physical evidence.
Right. Without the fingerprint you spoke about or the DNA, like, how do you do that?
Without the fingerprint and the DNA, how do you do that? So I think why they lost the case, Loon, is they made it really complicated. And the defense is supposed to make it complicated. The defense is supposed to give you all the reasons why you should have some doubt, right? Now, these guys, the prosecutors, they're like, oh, they want to talk about where the gun was. Let's talk about it. They want to accuse the cops of moving the gun. Let's talk about it. They want to talk about that the gun in the social media pictures isn't the gun. Or the government wanted to look at social media pictures. And so the government gave the jury a lot of issues to look at and consider. And in presenting it, they did it in a very drawn out, long way. The judge a lot of times was cutting evidence off, saying, this is repetitive. We know this. We know this. We know this.
Right.
And so it seemed like the government took a very simple case and made it complicated. And if you had a strong case, why would you take your simple, strong case and make it complicated? And I think the jury ultimately was left with that impression. I think anybody who watched that trial was just thinking, wait, maybe constructive possession is a hard case. Maybe maybe they do need to prove it to me. And I don't think they have, certainly not beyond a reasonable doubt.
When we look at these prosecutors and the overreaching in regards to social media pictures and social media, see, the thing is, for some reason, this judge seemed to be a little no nonsense in regards to entertaining the social media antics or the lyrics type of vibe that they usually are able to go into that bag on us. That bag has been very effective from a government standpoint or for a state standpoint. They go in that bag and say, look, we're painting him this way because he does this on social media. He says this in his lyrics. What made the government in that state or the feds in this particular case not be receptive to that approach that they usually use against us?
Well, I think part of it is, you know, the stuff that happens in the early part of a case versus the stuff that happens towards the end of the case. So now when you're about to go to trial, there is a very significant, rigorous process where the judge is really going to look at what pictures you intend on using and this that you're using and that you're using. And so at that stage, that right before the trial stage, there's a way higher bar. Early on, when they're making their bond arguments, when they're maybe challenging the sufficiency of the pleading, in state court, you know, judges just let a lot of that slide early on, like, oh, that's what you guys are saying right now. All right, we'll figure it out. We'll get to the truth of it. You want to use, you're alleging you've seen this on social media. All right, I believe you, officer. I believe you. And so it's not really getting tested early on in these cases. And then people are being pressured, you know, saying, hey, you give us some information, or you need to take this plea. And so it doesn't really get to that point. But look, the reality is, if you do something on social media, it can and will be used against you.
Exactly.
And more than that, if you're doing something on social media, you're basically telling somebody, hey, look at me.
Right.
You want something to investigate?
Yeah. And also, I always tell the rap dudes and all my homies and the street people and my industry friends and the people on the network with me, whoever I can, I tell them, yo, if you documenting crimes in public in any way, that's a stupid move. You know what I'm saying? So even if you document something that could be took and used against you as a crime, you putting yourself in a sticky situation, man. And I see them using social media, and it irks my soul. Let's get back to NBA YoungBoy. With him beating the feds this time, how does this coexist with the other case, and what is he looking forward to in regards to the other case?
So the other case is completely different, unrelated to this case, especially now that this case is a not guilty. The other case, they just have nothing to do with each other. All right. So in the other case, he was outside of his grandfather's home recording music videos. Now, he was technically on the public street, but, you know, he's right in front of his grandfather's home. They've been there forever, and he's just standing out in front on the curb recording a music video. And there's a 911 call that comes in, and it says, hey, these kids are out here. It looks like they have guns on them, something. And then all these cops come in, and, you know, the FBI had already been kind of sitting in Baton Rouge looking out at NBA YoungBoy. There's a whole joint task force between state and federal enforcement looking into street gangs.
Right.
Across every, I mean, it's pretty much every state at this point has one. And in Louisiana, they had a stepped up presence because they were on this young boy. So the cops come in, they round them all up, and they sit them down, and they start searching. They do this, they do all that, and they find a gun, and they find a hard drive and a camera, and they look through the hard drive and the camera, and they see pictures of NBA holding the gun they found. And they said, oh, look, these pictures were taken today. This is the gun we recovered today. He was in possession of this gun today outside of his grandfather's home. Let's charge him 5 years, 10-year max. And I mean, that was the charge, man. That's the charge in Louisiana against YoungBoy. Never broke again. You touched a weapon. The weapon's not, there's nothing. They're just saying we have you on picture touching it for the purpose of recording music outside your grandfather's home. Anyway, they charge him. They lock him up. He does like 163 days before he gets a bond on that case. So he's paid 163 days of debt to society for touching a gun on a music video.
That's sad.
Facts. All right, now the lawyers, the same lawyers who beat that California criminal gun case, plus Drew Finling,
shout out,
big
Drew.
time lawyer in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So Drew and the Louisiana lawyers, Jim Manasseh, guy freaking crushed it in court the other day.
Yes.
So these two go in there and they go to the judge, and this is the chief judge for that federal district down there. So, you know, she's a very respectable authority. And she takes 3-4 days of evidence from the officers where they testify why they feel like they had probable cause to make the arrest and the search and bring these charges. And at the end of those 3-4 days, she takes like a month, 2 months to look at paper arguments, and both sides submit briefs and motion in support of the arguments that were made at the hearing. She considers it all. She issues a written opinion where she says, in sum and substance, you violated his constitutional rights. These pictures that you've recovered cannot be used against him. And I know the reason why I'm saying all that is because the affidavits submitted by law enforcement to establish probable cause for the search are false, materially false, false to the point that I'm throwing this evidence out. And I'm raising the question that I don't know if you wrote those affidavits to be intentionally false. I don't know if you meant to lie. But I'll tell you that I'm reading it and it's wrong. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt that maybe you made a mistake in the speed of the moment or oversight, whatever, and you didn't intend to mislead me. But given that it's wrong, we got to throw this evidence out.
And for all intents
so
and
she
purposes,
throws the evidence out. The government goes back to her. They do something called a motion for reconsideration. And they say, Judge, you just made this decision, but we want to argue it one more time with you. Please take a look at these new arguments. She says, no, denied. Then they say, okay, we're going to go to the appeals court. So right now, that's where that case is at. That the judge once said you violated his constitutional rights, denied the motion for reconsideration, insinuated that there might be intentional deceit on the part of law enforcement to bring charges and seize evidence in violation of a man's constitutional rights. And the government continues to press this case now at the appeals level. All of this, Loon.
Wow.
All of this is based on their feeling that the way to enforce the laws of our country is to make sure that if NBA YoungBoy held a gun outside his grandfather's home in a music video, he does 5 years.
Do you understand how absurd that is?
Wait, Balloon, do you understand what could be happening to other people?
That's what I'm saying. And so that's why I believe you are so important. And we'll get back to the YoungBoy situation. But I think you are so important, bro, because the way that I'm able to break things down for my culture and take some of these business deals and dissect them, your ability to do it with these criminal cases is second to none. Like you're number one and number two ain't even close. You see what I'm saying?
I appreciate that, brother.
And I want people to know that, like, I think it's important that we say, because you're not being paid for this. This is literally a passion for yours, I will believe.
Yeah.
I mean, you can monetize
look, I always wanted to be a lawyer. I always wanted to be a lawyer that helped people. And I started as a corporate lawyer and I quit that shit. And then I started representing workers in lawsuits and I found a lot of passion and meaning in it, but nobody knew who the fuck I was.
Right.
And so I wanted to get people to know me. And I had this passion and this interest in rap. And I kept seeing, honestly, I just kept seeing my favorite rapper get arrested. I'm like, yo, wow, this is kind of crazy. Like everybody I listen to is catching charges. One day, the kid 6ix9ine catches a charge in my city when I'm going to be at that same court. So I went in there, poked my head in and said, what's going on? It was fascinating. I came out, I spoke on it. And since then, it's just been an organic passion where it's growing and shifting into this thing where I feel like I actually can make an impact, where I could draw people in. I could give you some of these details. I could give you some of these headlines. We could talk about the process and you can come in. And then we can all kind of rally together a little bit and say, okay, it seems like there are significant issues in the criminal justice system. For instance, juror pools. Like, are we sure that we are responding to jury notices? Because if you have an interest in fairness in the criminal justice system, then please check your mail for the jury notice. And please show up for the jury duty.
100%. It's the old, you can't beat them, join them. Like, you got to get in the system to affect the system. They have it locked away. You cannot affect the system from outside of it. You can scream, you can holler, you can be loud as you want, but until you get inside of that system, you will not be able to affect it either way. So that's very important, man. Tell me, why aren't you, because my understanding, do you do criminal law? You practice criminal law?
No, it's a long-term goal of mine where, you know, I want to be a trial lawyer. A trial lawyer is really just somebody who's able to digest information and then recite information in a persuasive way to get 12 people in a box to agree with him. So, you know, I think any type of law that you do where you're working on persuasion and argumentation is preparing you for trial law. And my goal is to continue to do what I've been doing, which is my employment law practice, but picking up little cases here and there, getting experience from some of these really like top-notch, best-in-the-game lawyers who showed me love and given me an opportunity to learn from them and get some insight into how they function. And so over the next couple of years, you know, I'll pick up some cases, I'll continue getting this experience, and then when I feel I'm ready, I'll go ahead and put that out there that, look, if you're going to trial, you got a criminal case in New York, I got you.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Do you get any resistance from a traditional lawyers that your approach is so unique?
I mean, I think all the traditional lawyers don't really see what the hell I'm doing. They're like, I mean, do you get paid? I'm like, no. They're like, all right, I got to go make some money, bro. I need to go make some money. I think a lot of lawyers, they sell their time, you know?
Yes.
I got 8 hours today, Loon. I could sell it for $100 an hour. I'm going to make $800. I could sell it for 200. I could make 1,600. I could take an hour lunch, sell it for 3. I could make, whatever,
Right.
so on and so forth. But it's just that 8 hours. You got to try to squeeze the fucking juice out those 8 hours.
Exactly.
Me, I'm not really like that. I'm not out here chasing checks for my 8 hours. I have a
per
team
hour.
of lawyers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do the per hour shit. I
Right.
don't really build my time like that. I get cases, we bring cases, we'll settle cases, we might lose cases, we might take them to trial and win cases. But at the end of the day, me and my team, we're good. I'm not chasing my tail where I need to fucking capitalize on every minute of my day.
That's good to
You know
hear,
what I'm saying?
man.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a luxury. It's a pleasure. I don't think most lawyers can really say that. And so I think most lawyers see me and they go, wait, you're spending time and not getting paid for it? Fuck all that. I got to go make some money. Me, I'm like, I want to build my brand. I want to have name recognition. I want people to think of me when they think of, positive criminal justice reform, when they think of,
Right.
hey, who's a lawyer who I can, kind of look to for some insight into what's going on. That, for me, that's enough. That appreciation, that bond,
Right.
this time with you right now. Yesterday, I was in Beverly Hills with YoungBoy. I mean, that's enough.
Right.
I don't need to get paid.
And you know what? I saw you do No Jumper. Adam is morphing into a great business situation over there. I think he kind of has took the charge, man, in regards to the people that had to model like him, kind of like the Vlads, the academics. He has a real cast, like he has a real slew of talent over there, and it's a constant running thing. I saw you do that yesterday, so shout out to Adam and shout out to you being able to, again, bounce in and out of these arenas. I want you to know it's value in that, bro. It's real value in that.
Yo, shout out to Adam. I appreciate you saying that. And man, what he's built out there, like he's really growing and he's building things and it's beautiful.
Right. Now, let's get back to YoungBoy. With him beating the feds, both of these are Fed cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with him beating it that one time, do you believe that that'll ramp them up the second time to even reach harder or even try to, right? Because beating them 2 times is a John Gotti effect. I'm not sure if they want him to have that. Even though fair is fair.
I mean, they'll never stop investigating him.
And let me say this, fair is fair, right? Even though it's sad that as a black man, we got to have that thought like, damn, I just won a case fairly. I was not guilty. I'm not guilty. Now, are they going to try to cheat on me going in this one? I just wonder, is that a thing? I mean, I know they hate to lose. Like, I just don't know if they can take 2 losses if they, can cheat their way in the... And I'm not suggesting that they're cheating, but
Your thought is 100% right that they're going to lick their wounds and they're going to continue to investigate this young guy.
But with the evidence, are they to a point where they can add any new evidence, any new details to this?
Well, no, they're just going to keep surveilling and monitoring and looking at people around him. The California case is done. It's a not guilty. The Louisiana case, as far as they're going to try to charge him for holding a handgun in a video, right now that video is not going to be allowed into evidence. So I don't know how they're going to say he possessed it. So unless the appeals court comes back, that Louisiana case is dead. And then separate and apart from these 2 cases, the one crime that was not guilty, the one crime that's currently an alleged crime, they'll continue to investigate him. Maybe they have other open investigations on him now.
Also, of course they do. All these high priority rappers, they better understand that there is no if about that. If you come from this background, you are under surveillance at all times. Or not, maybe not at all times, but somebody around you is under surveillance at all times, man. And that's what I don't like about this RICO thing, right? Is because I grew up in poverty, right? So some of my friends may not have the opportunity I have. And just because we are close in proximity and I love them and they're going to be with me on a tour bus and I'm going to talk to them and things like that, it seems like that they can rake all of those leaves together and make it be viewed as, that we are in conjunction with each other. I hate that approach, man. Is there any advice you have for rappers that in that situation? Like, you can't rid yourself of your loved ones. You can't control everyone. Like, what do you do to navigate that?
Well, I think there's just a lot of things that people need to understand that, it's all right. So let's talk about some of the social media stuff real quick. So people are posting stuff on social media where they're claiming affiliations and holding guns. Now, you might at trial convince a jury that the gun you're holding isn't a real gun, it's a prop gun. And you might at trial convince a jury that this affiliation is really just a friendly thing. It has nothing to do with sharing resources and then using those resources to go commit crimes.
Right.
But you could get charged based on that. You might beat it at trial, but you could get charged.
Right.
And in state courts, especially in certain state courts, you could get charged pretty easily, and you might get denied a bond, and you and 10 of your friends might find yourselves locked up in separate cells. Each person is being told the exact same thing. You're facing 5 to 20. One of the other people in your gang is talking to us and is going to give us the goods we need to put you away for the max. What do you want to tell me?
Right.
And that's what's going to happen, right? And so the idea that, you know, we're going to change the RICO laws is not going to really come to fruition in any meaningful way. I think we all need to sit down and have a conversation and a long look at the way the RICO laws, which was intended to target very complex, sophisticated, very, very, very profitable criminal enterprises that have kingpins at the top, and you need a sophisticated, complex law enforcement weapon to attack that type of organization, how that is being used to go out and target 17 to 25-year-olds in inner cities who are in communities where the crime rate is super high. And now they're all going to be charged as a criminal RICO enterprise where the burdens of proof are a lot lower. It's not always guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You can actually get someone convicted of a RICO charge by finding a lesser standard. This is crazy shit, Loon. And the reality is you just don't hear about it. You just don't see it because I didn't hear about it. I didn't see it until it happened to fucking YSL.
Yes.
I mean, the way that state RICO is being used, it's a low bar for law enforcement to go and grab people and lock them up and deny bond and now start putting the lien on them. And so that's probably been happening for a long time in a lot of states.
Right.
And you
it
got to
just
ask
haven't
yourself,
been visible. Yes.
Just hasn't been visible. And like, where is the line, right? Where is individuals' constitutional rights got to be respected over law enforcement's desire to lock people up and then lean on them to become informants?
Exactly. And for me, man, we're going to get to Gunna and YSL really quick. Let me ask you this. NBA YoungBoy, for me, and I'll give you how I felt about it. NBA YoungBoy, for me, very large presence. I always tell people he was worth more than 25 million. People saw him off for 25 million. He should have took it. Yo, they just gave number one, Drake, 500 million. He's number two if you look at the numbers. If we deal with the numbers, that little dude is number two. You can't put no 10 on that. You right? So we just dealing with, he got over 100 gold and platinum plaques. So again, when you just, and he be so low on them things. So again, dealing with the numbers, you know his impact. But I thought it was an internet impact. So to see his fans show up in the way that they showed up, tell me, what do you feel about NBA YoungBoy fans? I know you have a lot of them that engage with you. What's your feeling about the engagement, the level of engagement, and the fans that support NBA YoungBoy? It's almost like none of these other rappers.
I think a couple things. One, I think if you talk about success in terms of your fans, like, the guy who's most successful is the guy with the best fan base. And then you talk about your fan base in terms of quality and quantity. So quantity is obvious, right? How many fans you got.
Right.
And then quality is like, how devoted are they to you? Do they spin your shit every day? Do they show up for your concerts? Do they buy your merch? Do they interact with your social media? So if we like create a score that's based on two factors, and then we give you this composite score ranking your fan base over the past 5 years, I think you could argue that YoungBoy is number one. I mean, no doubt Drake is a bigger artist.
Yes,
bigger.
I'm speaking more so about the business, right? They just cut Drake the check for 500 million. So, and we talk about he spent the last 10 years on Billboard and countless number one albums and all these things. So on the number side, he has more numbers than YoungBoy, but when we deal with it like you're saying, as far as the quality and quantity of fans and that's a hard one. That's a great conversation, boy. That's a great conversation.
I think in the last 5 years in America, the guy who's been most successful at building a fan base and the guy who has the best fan base is NBA YoungBoy.
We're going to have to further that conversation. That is a fucking great conversation. I can argue Drake. I can argue Drake. Drake can take that audience and whip it over here and whip it over there. And, you know, I want to see YoungBoy translate that audience a little. You know, I want to see. Now, this is what I will say, and this is the most effective part for YoungBoy in regards to my understanding of the business, is that he came in, a lot of his fans wasn't consumers yet. They was just fans, and they were young. But he's been able to grow, and now they old enough to where they got jobs or they're able to have money. So now they become spending customers in this market, man. Because at first the reason why his YouTube numbers are like that is because a lot of his fans were not the fans that really had money they were too young really to spend. Like, the kids love him. He really has a high presence and those kids that was 13 5 years ago, or like you're saying, 18 years old now and things, and they're able to stand up and go to his shows and fly to where he's at and those things. So that makes him very, very in a very interesting place coming out of that deal. But boy, that's a very interesting conversation. Who has the bigger, in the last 5 years, who has curated the biggest fan base? Now continue with what you were saying about the quality and quantity. You were making a point. I apologize.
So I think in the last 5 years, he has done the best job of it. And part of that is because he's younger and hungrier and dropping more, right? So he's just dropping all the time. So he's bringing in a lot of new people all the time. And I think you're absolutely right that they were younger and they skewed from lower income communities. And over time, his fan base is going to get more diverse and more profitable for him. And the sky's the limit. Right.
Now, let me ask you this. Dealing with them or seeing them, there's a viral video in which I think will become one of the key moments of this case, where you were coming out of what I think is the courtroom and his fans were out there and you were trying to, yo, hold on, be quiet, yo, be quiet, yo, be quiet. Cantrell versus the state of, and you not getting, they went crazy.
Everybody shut up! Just hold the camera up. Go live.
We live! We live! We live! Okay, what you gotta say?
The United States of America versus Kentrell Golden.
Kentrell.
AKA Lil Top. AKA Live.
Explain that moment to me.
So we were in the courtroom, and you know, when the jury comes back and they say, "Hey, is there a foreperson?" They say, "Yeah, this is the foreperson." "Hey, foreperson, have you reached a verdict?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they hand it over to the judge, and the judge looks at the paper, reads it quietly to himself, and it's just so much tension. You know, they just build the tension. Mm-hmm. And then the judge, he doesn't even say guilty or not guilty. He reads the whole fucking thing. He reads the case number and reads the charge and says the jury has returned a verdict, and going on and on. So like I am right now. And then finally he says not guilty. So I get up and I start clapping. I'm just like, yes. And all the people get up and they start clapping, and the judge is like, "Yo, what are y'all doing? Everybody get locked up. Sit down, shut up." So I run out the room. Now my phone is being held by some other lawyers who have court passes to have phones in that court. I'm not allowed to bring my phone in. Only people who are officially part of the case can have the phone. And the defense team showed me a lot of love after, you know, all the dedication I showed to the case. I gave one of their staff my phone to hold, so I don't have the phones.
Right.
Now, I know I'm not going to get the phone until the whole process ends. So there's going to be 3-4 more minutes in court, and then they're going to walk everybody out. But everybody's outside. Nobody's got their phone. None of the lawyers are going to tweet this shit out. And so I'm thinking, I'm like, man, somebody's got to go outside and tell the fans. So I immediately run out the courtroom, And I get about halfway down the hall, and then I go, wait a second. Was there one count or two counts? Because if there was two counts, I only heard one not guilty. I need to hear another not guilty. And he was charged with the gun and the ammunition and the magazine. So I wasn't sure if there was two counts, and I kind of prematurely ran out there. So I ran back in. I heard there was no second count, not guilty. All right, cool. So then I'm thinking, all right, if I hang out here, I could get my phone back, and then I could get the interview with Kentrell, because they're going to let me walk out with him, and they're going to go out a separate entrance, and I know what entrance they're going out.
Right.
But if I do that, then nobody's going to tell the fans, and that would kind of suck. So in that moment, I decided, I think this is going to be a dope moment if I come out here and tell the fans. I just ran out. I left my phone, and I announced it to the fans. I think it was dope. I think it gave a little bit of a space for that energy to kind of fill in, and a little capsule to remember that moment by.
Yes.
Yeah, it was dope.
100%, man. I said, yo, that's a moment right there. The fans were recording you, and it was a super dope moment. What was his lawyers like? Did you have to explain his importance to his fans, to his lawyers, or do you think they were aware of the culture equity that NBA YoungBoy has?
Oh no, they're aware. So he has a lot of lawyers. His lead attorney team is a Louisiana law firm. I think they are based out of Baton Rouge. Manasseh, Gill, Knipe, and Belanger. The head guy, Jimmy Manasseh, I mean, he has represented YoungBoy for a very long time, and they have a relationship that's a bond. And
Right.
So they understand each other very well. And Jimmy knows, what Kentrell means to hip hop.
That's dope, man. I know you spoke about you wasn't able to have your phone, and we'll transition. I'll speak to you a few minutes about Thug and Gunna, and then we'll get you out of here. I appreciate you for coming by for sure. You spoke about them not letting you have your phone in there. For me, I noticed something with Gunna, and his last time going up for bond, there's no video found. Is that a tactic? What's the thinking behind no media involvement in such high profile cases? Do you know, or is there any explanation of that?
I mean, I will say this. In my opinion, the major media outlets that cover the Fulton County Courthouse, News 12 in Atlanta, or whoever those folks are, they are, I think, way more friendly with prosecutors, because prosecutors are able to give them a lot more stories than defense attorneys. And so I think there's a built-in interest in publicizing the prosecutorial point of view a lot more. And there's opportunity, right? The prosecutor is going to talk to you, and she's going to give you those 2 minutes. And the defense attorneys are just trying to beat the charges, and they don't give a fuck about talking in the press. And so the main outlets that are sitting there in Atlanta have their camera literally situated inside the courthouse and can just turn it on when they want. They do it when they want. And I don't know that, they're particularly, unless the prosecutors kind of push them to do it, I don't know that they always do it. I mean, if I had time that day, I would have definitely went to the second Gunna bond hearing and tried to explain what the hell happened there and how we still think that he's not worthy of a bond, right? I mean, the basic bond point, I'd love to share it with your listeners.
Yes.
In America, you have the presumption of innocence. You are innocent until proven guilty. And that includes the right to not get locked up on charges. If you lock me up because a cop said he saw me in a picture with a gun and he thinks I'm a felon, if you lock me up because he said that, I'm not innocent until proven guilty. I'm locked up before proven guilty. I'm guilty when alleged.
Right.
So the way that logic goes is, hang on, innocent until proven guilty, no locking people up until they're guilty. And then we continue the conversation. We go, but hang on, let's keep going. There's other things to consider. All right, so everybody has the right to a bond. Should everybody get a bond? And then the law basically, it asks two questions. One, are you going to come back to court? Certainly in the federal law, this is the law. I can't speak specifically in every state, but in the federal courts, they ask two questions. They ask, are you going to come back to court? Are you a flight risk? And the second question is, are you a danger or a threat to the community? Are you going to go kill witnesses? Are you such a violent criminal that you might just go commit more crimes like the one that you're alleged of? As we say that if there is a basis from law enforcement to show that this guy's a flight risk or this guy's a danger, then we will lock him up until he's proven guilty. And the idea that Gunna is such a danger, or he's such a threat to witnesses or a danger to the community, I think is suspect. I wasn't at that second bond hearing. I was at the first, and I have not seen any credible evidence that shows, for example, like an affidavit from a witness that says that, I know about this man's activities and he's threatened me and said that he's going to kill me if I testify. You don't have to tell us who that witness is.
Right.
You don't have to show us the affidavit, but tell us that you have a sworn affidavit from a witness with material information about Gunna's crimes who has been specifically threatened by Gunna. They haven't said that, not to my knowledge. When I went to court, what I heard was a statement from the prosecutor, which I've talked about so many times that I can't believe it. And I saw it on so many blogs and so many news sites. They reported it like this was some damning testimony from the prosecutor about Young Thug. The prosecutor said this. The prosecutor said that we have spoken to other defendants in this indictment. Mind you, people that we don't know that Young Thug knows any of these other 28 people, right?
Exactly.
Obviously, he knows Gotti. Obviously, he knows Gunna, but there's 28 individuals. So when the prosecutor says that I've spoken to co-defendants in this case, and they have told me that they're scared of Jeffrey Williams, to me, that statement in and of itself says nothing about his eligibility for a bond at all.
I spoke
first
about
of all,
that.
I'm scared of fucking Jeffrey Williams. If I saw a Young Thug in a restaurant, I'm not just going to go up to him. He's fucking Young Thug. That's not because he's a gang member. I don't know that man. He's a real motherfucker. I'm not just going to. I could say I'm scared of him. That doesn't mean he's intimidating witnesses.
Yes, and
what does the word scared mean?
Yeah, they're misusing these things, and I find it interesting. I want to get your opinion on them using lyrics but not attaching any evidence to it. They're just going in there rapping random lyrics, like saying, "Yo, Your Honor, slime." He said here. Followed with snipers. Not that we pulled them over and caught 2 snipers in a car behind them. Like, I don't understand how they're able to do these things.
I'm trying to understand it myself, brother. But I gotta. For now, all I can say is that they do, and that stay off social media with the affiliations and the evidence of crimes, and don't rap about it, because this is how it's playing out.
So let me ask you this,
and I wish I could give you something else.
Yeah, I hate this. Are you telling me, and I'm gonna look into this, you telling me that they're not covering Gunna's bond because there's no media that'll go down there, or is it because the media that has access to going in there isn't going in there? Because I would think someone in Atlanta wants to take their camera and their media platform and go see what's going on with that situation. And for it to be no evidence of them doing nothing, I'm just like, yo, is this a tactic? NBA YoungBoy, no cameras, no evidence of nothing that's going on in court. It's like, I'm not understanding that.
Well, the federal courts, you can't have a camera in there. So you could go in there, observe, and then come out and report, which, some people do. But in Atlanta, your question is a great question. Your question is a great question. And it's just, eventually people will do it. People just haven't understood it. But yeah, there should be reporters,
right? Not
from News 12, who are in there, who are organic grassroots reporters observing what's happening and reporting on it. But there just isn't anyone. I do it as much as I can. I'm literally the only person.
Right, man. With NBA YoungBoy beating his case, possession is very important. Do you think that lends any kind of credence to Young Thug? His situation where they went in his house and had the 7 allegedly found some firearm. So that's a go.
It's 2 really different cases. YoungBoy had a very simple, basic possession. Did he know it was in the car? Did he intend to use it? Period. That was literally the only question for the jury. The RICO case, I don't even think the prosecutors understand what their charge is. I don't understand what the charge is. I don't think the judge understands what the charge is. RICO is not some shit that people have been charging people with for hundreds of years. The way RICO is being charged in Fulton County in the YFN and the YSL case, this is groundbreaking shit. This is a whole new attempt at doing it. This hasn't been done before, hasn't been challenged before. And so what you're seeing play out in real time is the cutting edge, the next chapter in law enforcement's attempt to continue to push the boundaries of how many people can they charge, and how little evidence can they get away with while still being able to lock up and isolate people. That's what's happening, man. It's fascinating.
Wow. And is there no way to affect that from the outside? Like no voting process,
I mean,
no awareness.
All right. Well, Loon, I would ask that 300 ENT was sold for how many mils?
A bunch.
A lot, right?
Yes.
Like 300?
I think it was about
500 million?
I think it was about 3, I believe.
Well, a certain chunk of that ought to go into some smart folks at some of the best law schools and some of the best law firms to do some research into what's happening with RICO prosecutions, how many of them actually result in convictions, what the case law actually says about whether some of these state RICOs that have never actually been applied and tested in the Supreme Court have any fucking basis at all.
Yes.
The amount of money it would take to even begin that conversation and the scholarly research in the annals and hallways of state legislatures and the United States Congress, you know, the type of movement you would need to get people in those places to start talking about it. You're talking about big money. You know, Young Thug is a huge artist with a lot of money, but his lawyers can't go and start opening up this conversation where we're not challenging charges, but we're challenging the very basis of the law.
Right.
And if you want to really talk about it, that's how you can talk about it. And that requires coordination. That requires a ton of money.
Ballpark. You got a ballpark number?
It's just constant commitment, bro. You have to have fellowships at our best law schools where law students are writing articles and researching the impact of RICO law on low-income communities and minorities. You need top law firms coming in, observing what's happening at these court proceedings, digesting and creating a history of what has happened at prior court proceedings.
And
it's a limitless budget.
You know what I was speaking about though is when they went and picked Young Thug up for the RICO charge. It was another charge where some guns were supposedly in his house, allegedly found in his house. And I wonder how slippery possession is in a superstar's house.
There was like 50 people in that house, but that charge, you know, it complicates the gang charge, because if there's 50 people in that house and you guys got all these guns, you better hope all of them are legal and not tied to any crimes.
Good point. Great point. That was a great point. Is there possible that Gunna and Thug beat the state and the feds get them for the same thing and make them do it all over?
I don't think so. No, I think the reason why the feds didn't take this case could be twofold. One, it might have been a coordinated strategy that, hey, you know, we're going to get a better chance getting these guys no bond in state court. And, you know, we're going to have an easier chance putting the squeeze on them in state court. In federal court, some of these guys would have probably got a bond, I think. And so that's, I think, maybe why they went state. The other reason they might have went state is the feds might have looked at it and said, yeah, we're not bringing this case. What do you got on Gunna? What are you doing?
That's
like,
what I was saying. Yeah.
Rap lyrics. The feds could have just said, this is not what we do.
Right. So, I thought that they presented it to the feds, and they, you know, naturally would present the evidence of this nature to the feds, and I just didn't think they thought it was good enough to take a swing at, you know. I don't know, man. This is very interesting stuff happening. Like you said, groundbreaking stuff. We're going to sit down at some point soon and get a real interview, man. I appreciate you stopping by. It's Up There Podcast. We'll be in touch, man, because, again, I want to sit down with you, man, where we can really get into some of these things and really, really get into some case law and things like that and really digest some game. But, man, you've been great. Every time you speak on the game, people are digesting it, man, so we thank you, man. And if you need us for anything on this side, we're a phone call away.
Loon, I appreciate you letting me jump on your platform and talk and interact with your base. I appreciate that, man. And thanks for showing me the love and appreciation and your kind words. Stay up. And yeah, we definitely going to get up and do that live podcast interview.
For sure, man. I appreciate you. Have a good day, my brother.
All right, man. Peace.
Peace. Yo, what up? This Big Loon. This is This Up There podcast.